When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleamed my teeming brain, before high-piled books in character hold like the rich garners of full ripened grain. When I behold upon the night's stabbed face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance, and when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fiery power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the world wide I stand alone, and think, to love and fame to nothingness do sink.
When I Have Fears That I May Cease to Be, by John Keats. Let's start with the title and analyzing this poem. Here, when I have fears that I may cease to be, he's thinking about his own mortality, he's contemplating death. But you also may notice that this broad statement here is also the first line of the poem. But when he wrote this poem, he didn't really outline a title for it to have. So later when it was published, the title just became the first line of the poem. So in these first two lines, he's saying, well, if I died today, what would happen? And he says, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. So he's saying, if I died today, I would still have all this unwritten poems and words in my teeming brain. If he dies, he's still going to have all this to write down, and he probably won't write it before he does die. And then before high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain. So a garner is a silo, a grain silo. It's an old word for that. And so he's comparing the books full of words to a silo full of grain. When I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance. He's looking to the sky, the celestials, for, a high romance, not a normal romance, a knights in shining armor romance. Everything is perfect, love at first sight, something that you would find in a romance movie or novel. And think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. Here he goes back to this theme of dying early when he says, I may never live to trace. He's saying, I may never get this high romance, the magic hand of chance. I put it all to luck, and get some high sweeping, wonderful romance story out of it. He's worried that he may never live to see that. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more. This fair creature of an hour statement here is kind of strange. It can mean one of two things. It can either mean that he's infatuated with someone right now, or it can simply be comparing a girl he's looking at like him as another human being in relative to the celestial time frame. So in millions of years and light years, humans only live but an hour. So he could be saying, this woman mortal like me, or this woman that I fall in love with at this moment. Never have I relished in the fairy power of unreflecting love. He's continuing with this love theme here. He's comparing love to a fairy power, something that's magical but fleeting, but yet it's unreflecting. This exciting, crazy, spur of the moment type thing that he's talking about with magic hand of chance, a high romance here. And then on the shore of the wild world I stand alone, and think, to love and fame to nothingness do sink. He's taking a step back here of looking at the wild world and realizing that his own desires to see all the words that he has in his brain poured out into pages, and this high romance love dream that he has, is kind of insignificant compared to the wild world. And this, taking a step back and looking at nature, is a common romantic technique of the early 19th century. Again, with looking at his own mortality, romantics would build a poem and then take a shift in the end and say, my desires that I've, kind of reflected on here doesn't really mean a lot compared to everything that's out there in the universe. Overall, this poem follows the form of a Shakespearean sonnet. It's 14 lines in iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter might sound familiar, but all it means is that every other syllable is stressed, and there's 5 of these paired stressed syllables per line. So if we look at the first 2, the stressed would go, when I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. That's every other syllable, and also when I have fears that I may cease to be. That's 5. Before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain. That's also 5. So it does follow this iambic pentameter, but also following the same Shakespearean sonnet form. This turn from halfway through 12 to the end is a big part of the Shakespearean sonnet. It changes the theme and tone, usually around lines 8 or 9, so about halfway through to 2/3 of the poem is when it usually happens. Keats leaves it off to halfway through line 12 in this one. But this zoom out and looking at the wide world is a common way to do that turn that comes in a Shakespearean sonnet. And then adding to this whole form factor, the rhyming scheme is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and G, G, which follows a typical Shakespearean sonnet. Which, if you notice, this G, G at the end is what's known as a rhyming couplet, which is necessary for a Shakespearean sonnet to end with. Because every pair, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, instead of continuing on to G, H, it's just G, G at the end.
Symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace.